Hello there. Today I'm going to talk about Mission Impossible. This is the part of DePalma season. I'm going to do one more before Christmas, DePalma, after this, which will either be Raising Cane or Passion, I'm not quite sure yet. And then I'll stop because I don't think DePalma films really work when it be Christmas time. I just don't think they're a good fit. I didn't realise how close I were to Christmas. I was saying I was going to do a few more last week, then it's like, oh, this probably won't work. So I said I'd do something more normal this week. I want to do a more mainstream film from DePalma because he does some every so often. He does enough. He kind of makes a mainstream film once in a while to ensure his financing for the films he wants to make. So so every so often you get a Carrie, or you get a Scarface or Untouchables, or this one, a Mission Impossible. I thought I want to do Scarface, but I want to watch it again, so I'm not going to do Scarface yet. I thought it would have been Christmas time. Scarface is not the right film. Carrie, I didn't want to do right now. And Untouchables is, I'll do it at some point. It's probably one of my least favourite De films. It's a really, really good film. I don't particularly care for it that much. I just don't think it's very interesting. But I will get to it. I'll probably find I like it a lot more when I watch it again. Because every time I say that, and I watch it again, it's like, oh, this is really good. But I need to really watch it again. I haven't seen it for years. But generally, I don't see it as one of his more interesting films. And Mission Impossible, in some ways, is one of his most impersonal films, but it's also one of his most fun, like, mainstream assignments, because he's not really taking this assignment that seriously. You know, it is closer to the sense of humour he's got in his more personal films. Like, there are lots of weird touches in this one that seem to have drifted in from, like, things, like, stylistically, not in plot. You know, things like you go into a restaurant that's an aquarium, which is much more like Femme Fatale or Raising Cane, or one of his weird psychodramas that is a mainstream Hollywood film. You've got things like that. You've got it's one of the biggest sequences in the film is a break-in sequence in the CIA, which would normally be a running gun thing. In this one, they have to go in, not be seen. There are lots of traps to get through. It's almost silent, and it's a big suspense sequence. Very rarely do you get a big film that spends that much time in suspense. And this is a good 10-15 minutes in the middle of the film that should be ratcheting up at this point. Instead, it's slowing itself down. There's lots of stuff like that feel that they come from DePalma's, like, more personal films, even though this is a big Tom Cruise vehicle. And obviously under a lot of compromises. Even the big sequence at the end where he has to do the big finale, the first half is a suspense sequence, and then the second half is this big over-the-top action bit that's done in a very stylised way that you don't see very often in films. It's like it's on top of a train, but it's all about not falling off the train and grabbing on and all that. And it feels much more of a suspense sequence within an action scene. And then when you find out the action scene, it's a stylised thing that's really cool, which is a helicopter in the middle of a Channel tunnel. And it still feels like DePalma, even though it's a big American blockbuster. It feels like his film in lots of ways that obviously they're allowed to do that. So they were hiring him for suspense skills. I mean, obviously Tom Cruise hired him for all that, but it's quite nice to see him bring all that to a big mainstream film in a way that you don't get very often. I mean, I think there's a reason why he doesn't make big films anymore. He's quite old, but he's also, I think he got burnt out by Mission to Mars and other films like that were big blockbuster films. When you wanted big action, he was more of a suspense guy. But this one, it's a nice fusion. It was a big hit for him, and he did well off it. And it feels like his film, but also feels like a Hollywood film because it's a big star vehicle. And that's kind of the interesting thing about this film, is it's him working within the system. So this was a big star vehicle. It was the start of a franchise, but they didn't know at the time it was going to be a franchise. They just thought it was going to be one, but they hoped it would be. Then there was a bad John Woo sequel that was bloody awful. And then it was the next sequel that kind of got them back on track. But one thing you noticed after the John Woo sequel is they went back to the formula that De Palma's created after that. Like, Tom Cruise is underrun from his own people. It's in every film since 3. And it was in 1 as well. There's a break-in sequence in every film, I think, apart from the last one. And even then, there's lots of little break-ins. It's just not... They're not aping that sequence anymore. There's a... You know... There's an escalation beyond... The films build to the break-in then they go towards conclusion after break-in halfway through. So it's all these bits they then did their own thing with different directors. But they're also following that formula that De Palma laid down with his films. I think they realised this works. What he did worked. And if you use that setup, you can do your own thing after that. But you do these few things and you'll have a good film. So this film set up what is a major franchise. And I don't think he's given as much credit as it should. And it was set up because it was one of those films famously that it was built around its action scenes. It was built around the scenes that De Palma had worked out. There's 3 sequences. The first sequence is where they go in and half the team's wiped out. Spoilers. Second sequence is the break-in, which is the big suspense sequence. And the third sequence is the conclusion. And they'd work everything else around that. And they'd work him on a run around all that. So that was a template, and I think they've just followed that template ever since, because it's like, that's something that really delivers for us. So that's what he brings. He brought that clarity, but within that clarity he had his own style, but there's not much depth to it. You have to really be aware there's not going to be much depth, but there is the good paranoia. I mean, there's an area where it works and an area where it doesn't work. The area where it really works is the idea that it's a much smaller spy movie than you expect from something like Bond or anything else. It's this small team has to go out and do something. They get betrayed, most of them are killed, Cruise is on the run for the rest of the movie, try to work out who betrayed them. That's basically the plot, that's the setup. But throughout that, they use that to make a paranoid film with Cruise trying to work out who set him up. So the setups are about him going back to his safe house and trying to work stuff out. So everything's visually really interesting, because it's about how do you up a set of stairs to make it interesting. How do you sit in a room with a computer and make it interesting? So De Palma can use all his tricks to make it fascinating. So there's Dutch dangles, there's shots that go round and round, there's looking down in the spiral staircase. There's lots of nice shots of Prague that are kind of weirdly paranoid. There's lots of stuff. There's shots in the bridge. There's shots early on when we're in the sequence where they get ambushed, where there's fog floating down onto this set piece. There's a bridge, and it's very classical, you know, old-fashioned movie making. Well, everything's going wrong, so and the shots take a while to get to the point. Well, a lot of things are happening within the shots, so what's happening keeps the pace up, but the shots themselves give a sense of inevitability and paranoia, and it's like so well done. The actual photography of all these suspense sequences throughout the film is beautifully done. It's really well done, which makes it a shame that the Blu-ray is such a terrible Blu-ray. I mean, it was done in 2010, it's a terrible Blu-ray that's been released. And I actually bought the digital version hoping it would be an improvement because it did a remaster recently. And what we got, the terrible Blu-ray copy. It was like, Jesus Christ, what the hell. So don't buy the digital version because it's rubbish. And just wait for them to put the remaster in that version. But yeah, but it takes away actually having a bad copy of it as you watch these brilliant floating shots, these close-ups of people's faces. You've got Jean Reno, you've got Ving Rhames, you've got Emmanuel Béart, John Voight, Cruise. A lot of faces have been really paranoid and weird looks throughout the film. De Palma catches everything, and the pauses between looks and De Palma is really in his element because he's doing the stuff that he's really good at. At the same time, so I mean, as a suspense machine, the film really works. But as a story, it doesn't work as well because there's meant to be a romance between Cruise and Beate that doesn't work. He's meant to be not sure if she's betraying him or she's really in love with him. And because these two actors do not seem to get on at all, they seem to be developing anything they're in the movie, you feel they do not want to be together. It's like, they're both good in the film, but the romance is a non-starter, it just doesn't work. So, I think they must have realised that during filming and upped the ante in the action a bit more. Because this is maybe the spine of the movie and it does not work. And I think it might have been cut down a bit just to keep the pace up because it does not really deliver. But what does deliver is the idea that Cruise and John Voight had a close relationship, and Voight's the villain, by the way. He plays a character from an old TV show, he's now turned villain, and he's betraying this guy, he's betraying Cruise. And that's what's really good about it. Voight is a villain. And all the other characters who manage to be eccentric and fun. And again, it sets up this idea of Cruise is a straight man in these films, and all the other actors that pull in get to be eccentric. You know, that's what this film delivers. And it's great that way as well. It's fun. I mean, it's a fun film. It's really fun. It's not top class De Palma because it's impersonal, but he brings to it his style and his sense of humour and his imprint in the action, and that action affects the mood of the whole film and creates this feeling in the film. It's just like it's a very self-aware action movie. It knows what it is. It can wink at the audience without winking too much. You know you're watching a film, maybe it's people who know you're watching a film, but it's enjoying itself. So it's a fun film. And I think it's a lot more fun than Untouchables for me, at least. I'd rather watch this than Untouchables. And I think it's one of his better mainstream films, but I prefer his more eccentric films. But I definitely recommend seeing it. I mean, this is actually a fun series. I mean, I really enjoy the Mission Impossibles. I mean, they're based on an old TV show that I don't care about. But once you get into the last few from like Close Protocol, those last few films are all fun. They all really deliver and enjoyable. They've all basically remixed this one in some way or another. They've always taken lots of stuff from this one, but they seem to understand that this formula works, that they should stick to this. There's something here that really is the core of this series. So this is the De Palma starting a franchise. It's the only time it ever happened. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, because it's not a very deep film, there's not much we can really say about it beyond the stylization, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. I'll be back next week with a weirder De Palma film, and then I'll come back after Christmas with other De Palma films. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you next video.